Hey guys, this is Mitch with FindPoint CGI, and today we're going to talk about integrating Postgres into Godot. So we're going to go through the process of using Docker to pull down our Postgres database, and we are going to use a Docker instance to set up that database. And then we are going to go ahead and download and install pgadmin, which is an admin tool that allows us to interact with the database. And then from there, we're going to pull down the add-on that we need to use to connect to our Postgres database. And we're going to interact with that and do some selections and some inserts and things like that. And that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we have to talk about is what is Docker. Now, Docker is an open source project for automating the deployment of applications as like a portable, self-sufficient container that can run on the cloud or on premises. Now, that's a lot of words, and it's kind of confusing what that means. As a person who did not understand Docker when I first started, that made no sense to me, and nobody really made it make sense to me. Well, the easiest way to understand what Docker is it's a virtual machine, like you would say VirtualBox, or like you would say really any other virtual machine application like Hyper-V or something like that. But the big difference is instead you have this thing called a container engine, and that container engine just emulates the operating system that you're running all of these applications off. So instead of emulating it around, different guest operating systems, so instead of you running, let's say, like 5 Linux virtual machines on your machine, instead you're running one. And it makes things a little bit easier, and it's a lot more memory efficient, and it's just a better system than the previous system, with kind of an asterisk there because it's not necessarily the best. The easiest way to explain kind of how it is with a basic analogy. So let's say you have a deck of spreadsheets, right, that each contain one paragraph. To issue these letters, you need to pick some of these sheets with the paragraphs you need. So you stack them to align them, and they kind of read okay, right? And then you would just take a photocopier and scan it, right, to be like, this is what I want. And then you can make as many letters as you would like. Well, that's basically what Docker is. So you basically take these applications and these layers, and you just kind of layer them on top of each other to make your container. And that's pretty much Docker in a nutshell. Why is it better than running it locally on your machine? Because when I'm done with whatever it is I'm testing, I can just crumple it up and throw it away. Or I can save a state and say, I like where this is at, so let me save this. And then I can create multiple versions of that exact machine again without needing any additional work. So it saves a lot of time. It's easier to work with than VirtualBox or things like that. And it's universally accepted. So if you were to test your application on your machine and then you were to deploy it out on the cloud, it will work the exact same way because it's a snapshot of your application and of the machine environment right there. So that's what Docker is. So let's go ahead and download it and install it and go from there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and download and install Docker. So let's go ahead and click download for Windows and let's save it. I've already downloaded it, as you can see right here. So let me just go ahead and execute it. So after you have it downloaded, go ahead and go to your downloads directory and click on Docker Desktop Installer and double click on it. All right, so now it's going to go ahead and go download all the packages it needs, and we're going to say, hey, install the required components for WSL2 and go ahead and add a shortcut to your desktop. And let's hit OK. And it's going to go ahead and unpack all the files it needs to go ahead and install for you. And it's going to go ahead and install all of its virtual machine goodness that you would expect from Docker. So I'll be right back with you guys once it is completed. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hit close, and it may or may not request you to restart. In my case, it didn't, but some people have been required to restart. So make sure that you go ahead and restart. Now, for Docker Desktop to work, you need to have Hyper-V enabled. So make sure that while you do that restart, go ahead and enable Hyper-V. And if you don't know how to do that, I'll leave a link in the description below for some things that might be able to help you through that process. Now, let's go ahead and execute Docker Desktop, and let's see what happens. Okay, so we got an unhandled exception. So it says, hey, if you continue this, then the application, will try to ignore this error. Hit continue, and you'll see that it says, hey, WSL install is incomplete. WSL Linux kernel is now installed under a separate MSI package. Please click the link and follow the instructions to get the kernel update. So let's go ahead and click on that link. Let me resize this for you real quick. And you'll see that it takes us to the Microsoft website. Now, the beauty of this is Microsoft basically handles most of this for you. But first things first, if we scroll up to the top, we need to enable the subsystem for Linux. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's open up PowerShell as admin. So make sure you right click on it and run as administrator. Now, once you have an administrator PowerShell window, let's go ahead and grab our enable script here. So go ahead and copy that and paste it. And it'll go ahead and go out and pull all of our subsystem for Linux stuff. And I'll put the commands you need to run in the description below, so that way you guys don't have to go out and do the docs system like what I'm doing here. Now, if I scroll down, it says, hey, make sure you check your requirements. I know that I have that. Let's go ahead and enable our virtual machine features. So let's go ahead and enable that. It's going to go ahead and run and download all the stuff it needs. And then we need to go ahead and download a Linux kernel update package. And what a Linux kernel update package is it is a install package. Again, I will leave a link to it in the description below. So if you double click on that and you go ahead and start installing WSL, we're going to run through that real quick. It's a pretty quick install, so it should be 5 seconds. There we are. And we are going to come down here and set WSL as our default version. So we'll say WSL set default version 2, and that's going to set the default version. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to install our Linux distribution of choice. So let's go ahead and click on this little button here, and it's going to say, hey, we want to open up an application. Say yep, and that's going to take you directly to it. Now, you get a choice between the different Linux distributions you want. Now, it really depends on what you're trying to do. Ubuntu is awesome for 90% of the stuff you want. It's bleeding edge, quote unquote. It's not really, but kind of bleeding edge. Kali Linux is offensive security testing. So if you're doing like penetration testing and hacking into computers, this is an awesome distribution for that. Debian is basically Ubuntu, but more stable. And but the packages behind it are less as new. And then Alpine WSL is a small WSL-based subsystem that can run Linux programs. So it really depends on what you want. This is like a stripped-down version of Linux. This is full Linux, but stable, and this is full Linux, but less stable. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Ubuntu and just go ahead and install it. And go ahead and hit Get. And I'm not going to sign in because I don't really want Microsoft to have my data. Now I'm going to hit Install. And it's going to go ahead and download Ubuntu. Or I know some people call it Ubuntu or Ubuntu. It just kind of depends on, who you are and how you want to say it. I think the official way to say it is Ubuntu, but I'm just going to call it Ubuntu. So if you guys have a problem with it, go ahead and yell at me in the comments. That's fine. And we are going to go ahead and finish this download. Awesome. So now we have Ubuntu installed. So go ahead and click on launch, and you'll see that there is a little pop-up here that shows up. Now, Ubuntu is going to go ahead and install all of the things that it needs to operate. So we're going to let that run through, and then we should be good to go to actually start using Docker. So it's going to ask us to enter a Unix username, and I'm just going to put in tour, and my password is going to be tour, and that will work for me. So what this does is it gives us a full Linux desktop on our Windows machine, which is awesome for us in the Godot world because it allows us to test some of our code without a GUI, at least on the Linux world, which makes it a little easier for us to test if our code is cross-platform, which is an awesome, cool little feature that Windows has. Now that we have all of this, we can go ahead and open up Docker Desktop and attempt to do it again. So you can see how it says Docker engine has failed to start. Need to go down to the bottom. Let me pan this for you guys real quick. You guys can see my little recording software. So if we come down here and we right click on Docker and we say restart Docker, and then you'll see this little pop-up comes up right here. And we are going to click restart. And what that's going to do is that's going to attempt to restart our Docker engine. And you'll see a notification that says, hey, the Docker desktop is restarting. Great. So now we have Docker running. You'll see right here we have a nice little green button here. So now we can actually explore what Docker can do. So this is where Docker Hub comes in, okay? What Docker Hub is, and if I go up here and I click on it, Docker Hub is a giant list of things that we can use with Docker. And one of the cool things is, for instance, you can see all these different things that we have. So like an Ubuntu official image, right? So if I wanted to create a Linux system that's running in the background, right, I don't need to modify my actual machine. I can just spin up an image of that machine. Same thing with like Redress if I'm doing a data structure server or a Node.js platform for doing web development, or like Alpine, which if you guys remember Alpine WSL, is right here. They have that. Or like MySQL or BusyBox or Postgres, which if you guys don't know anything about Postgres, it's an awesome database. So you guys should definitely check it out. They have like a Python image and all sorts of stuff. And I don't really want to get into too crazy detail, but one of the coolest things about Docker is that it allows you to spin up multiple instances of the same thing. So what does that mean for us? Well, what we can do is we could make a server, let's say, and you could take that server, spin it up, do your testing, right? And then instead of needing to uninstall your server, you can just spin up a new instance of that server as if it was never touched. So it really allows you to go in, modify stuff, and then completely wipe away stuff. It also allows you to spin up multiple instances of something. So one of the things that I do at work a lot of the times is we have to test our application against multiple operating systems, and we have to test our application against multiple interconnectivity operating systems. So like, for instance, a Windows machine may need to talk to a Linux machine, right? So what I can do is I can spin up a server and then spin up multiple clients and have the clients talk to each other and the servers talk to the clients and verify that it all works. And I can do all of this on one machine instead of needing to do this on multiple machines. So enough about that. Let's go ahead and just pull down our Postgres Docker image, which is why we're here, right? So let's scroll down here and let's find Postgres. Let's click on that and copy our command. And then let's go ahead and open up a command prompt here. And we will go ahead and paste our Postgres pull, and let's go ahead and pull it. And it may, yep, there we go. So now it's pulled down my Postgres image, and you'll see how quick that was, right? It just pulled it right down, and now I have Postgres on my machine. But I don't have it actually installed because I don't need to, because Docker just handles all of that for me. All right, now that we have pulled our little Postgres image, we need to go ahead and create our container, right? So we need to run our container. So we're going to say Docker run --name dev -Postgres space -e for environment variable. and we're going to say Postgres, GRES, underscore password is equal to, and then you go ahead and put whatever password you want here. Now, in my case, I'm going to put password dash P 5432 colon 5432, and then we are going to say Postgres. Now, what does all this do? Okay, so first things first, we're saying, hey, Docker run, and we're going to tell it that we want to run the Postgres image. Okay, so there's images and containers. I believe I've already gone through this, but there's images and containers, and images are what containers are made of. So an image is what a container takes as its base, and then it builds upon that, if that makes sense. We're saying we want to name it dev Postgres. We want to set an environment variable. In this case, it's Postgres password. And we want to make it password. And then we're saying, hey, let's link up our ports so that this port is equal to this port. So the container's port of 4532 is equal to our port of 4532. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And what that's going to do is it's going to go ahead and calculate and build out our container. So you'll see it's going to ask us for Windows Defender is going to yell at us. Let's hit allow access so that way it has access. And you will see that now the database is ready to accept connections. So that's great. That means our database is up and running. So awesome. Now we need to get some kind of way to administrate this tool. So let's go ahead and download PGAdmin. So if you come over here and then you click on download, and the link to this is in the description below. So go ahead and check that out. Hit Windows, PGAdmin 5.6, and then let's go ahead and click on PGAdmin 5.6.64. I've already downloaded it, so you can see it's right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel, and I'm going to open up my downloads folder instead. So here's PGAdmin. We're going to double click on that. We're going to click next. I accept. I'm not even going to read it because, you know, who reads that? And next, and go ahead and hit install. So let's go ahead and let that run, and I will be right back. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hit finish, and then we are going to go ahead and open up PGAdmin. Whoops, I did not click the right thing. All right. Now this tool takes a long time to load, so just go ahead and get a cup of coffee or something, and we'll be right back. All right, so the first thing it's going to ask is for your password. Just go ahead and throw in whatever that password was, and it's going to go ahead and attempt to connect to your Postgres database, which in my case, it totally did. So that's awesome. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about PGAdmin. PGAdmin is a tool that allows you to administrate your Postgres database. Like I said, that's inside that Docker container. So we have all these cool little features, and if you guys want me to go through all of the features, I'm more than happy to in a separate video, but that would make this video very long. So our main concern is schemas, and our main concern is tables and possibly procedures and functions, but we might not get to those. So let's go ahead and go from schema to tables. Let's right click, create ourselves a table, and then let's go ahead and name it scores or scoreboard. It looks like it's saved my stuff. So one of the things we have to know about Postgres is we need to keep our stuff lowercase. If you do uppercase, you need to use quotes around everything, and it becomes a nightmare to manage. So please use lower cases if you can. Column, let's go ahead and add in a column, and let's say ID, and then let's make it an integer. So if you just click on this, integer, and then we're going to say not null, primary key, yes. Then go ahead and add another one, and then let's call it name, and let's say text. And then let's go ahead and add one more, final one, and say score. And then add in it as an integer. Awesome. So the rest of this we don't really need. Most of this is just stuff that, you know, can be useful, like primary keys, foreign key, check, unique, exclude, things like that. How you're going to partition your data, how your data's parameters are going to be set up, how your security is going to be set up, and the actual SQL that's going to be used to generate this table. Now, most of this is useless for us to do just based off of what we're doing right now, but it is something that you guys could definitely take a look at. So let's go ahead and click save, and then we are going to go into our table and we are going to right click on it, and there should be a way to query tool right here. Click on that, and then we are going to select star from scoreboard. If we go ahead and run that, you'll see that the table is empty. So now we can do one of two ways of putting data in. We can put in data by typing. We can go 1 and then double click on name and say find point CGI and say like I got 100 points, let's say. And then of course if we click down here, we can say 2 and we can say something like Silent and say Silent got 120 points because he's good at video games. Or we can do something like insert into scoreboard, and then we could say ID, comma, name, comma, score, values, and then we can go ahead and insert in our values. So we could do something like 3, comma, nomad, comma, 130, right? And then if we wanted to add an additional one, we could go ahead and do this and say 4, comma, Victoria, comma, 150, right? And since these are strings, we need to actually have quotes around them, and they have to be single quote, the single tick quote, because if it's the double tick quote, Postgres will take it as this is a column or a table, not a name or a string. So if we go ahead and hit go, whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing. So because I did this out of order, it's not letting me run this query. So let's just go ahead and hit X, run the query tool again, and then just paste this in. And then we can go ahead and run this. And you'll see that it returned the query successful. So if we go ahead and select star from scoreboard, and then we go ahead and we run that, you'll see that we have our data here. So we have our little scoreboard. Awesome. So now that we have some data in our database, let's go ahead and jump into Godot and we can start interacting with our Postgres database. Okay, so now that we're in Godot, what we're going to do is we're going to first create a 2D scene here. And now we're going to need to go out to pull down our Postgres client here. So I'm going to be pulling it down from GitHub. And the reason why I'm pulling it down from GitHub is because GitHub has the most recent version of this plugin, and I've run into a few issues with the one that's out in the asset library. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this down. So let's just click on code and download our zip here, and that will pull down all of our code. So now that we have this pulled down, I'm just going to pull this into download so it gets extracted here, and you will see that we have a bunch of different scripts here. Let's go ahead and grab PostgresSQL client. Open up Godot, and let's go ahead and copy this down into it. So now we have PostgresSQL client here, and we are going to right click our node 2D. We're going to add, we're going to right click on our node 2D. We are going to attach a script, and we'll just call this select from DB. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to create an instance of our database. So var database is equal to PostgresSQL client.new, and then we need to create our user, password, our host, our port, and our database connection. So we will say var, var user is equal to, and I'm going to say Postgres, and then underneath that I'm going to say var password is equal to password, because that's my password. It's extremely secure. Keep it a secret. Var host is equal to local host. Var port is equal to 5432, and var database connection is equal to whatever your database name is. So if we look, our database name is Postgres. So Postgres. Make sure that these are all correct so that they all match up with what you have. So Postgres, and my password is correct. So that should work. Now, under our ready, we need to go ahead and connect some of our database signals here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say database.connect connection underscore establish, comma, self, comma, and then we need to come up with our little function that's going to be ran. So it's going to be select from DB. All right. Now we're going to have to set up our next signal, which is our connection closed signal. So database.connect connection error, comma, self, comma, error. And finally, database.connect connection closed, comma, self, comma, closed connection. So what these are doing is they're saying, hey, when we connect to our database, let's go ahead and run this function here. When we have an error, let's run our error function. And when we connect, when we close our connection, let's go ahead and run our connection closed. Now, from here, we need to go ahead and connect to our database. So database.connect to host, and we need to pass in our Postgres path here. So what we're going to do is we'll say, quote, Postgres SQL / plus our user plus this little colon here plus password plus @ plus host. Weird, it didn't light up like I would expect because the rest of them did. Colon plus our port plus / plus database connection. Great. So that's pretty much everything that we need here for our little database connection to happen. Now, there are easier ways to do this. So if I can show you another way here, instead of doing this, we can actually do something like $S colon $, or %, %S at %S colon $D / %S, and then we can go ahead and do a % symbol here and then pass all of this in here. Let me change this over here. So you could definitely do something like this, and some people find this cleaner. Some people find this less clean. It's up to you, whichever one you prefer. I'm just going to keep with what we originally had, but you're welcome to do whichever one you want. Both of them are valid. So now that we have our database connection happening, what we need to do is we need to say, hey, now that we have our connection, let's go ahead and create our connection function. So we're going to say func select from DB, and we are going to, oh, my C# is getting at me. All right, there we go. And we're going to say print running select query. Oh goodness, I'm running into so many troubles. There we go. And now we need to go var data is equal to database.execute. So execute right here. And then I'm going to hit enter. And the reason I'm going to hit enter is because we're going to create a little SQL query inside of here that is going to allow us to run this stuff. So if I do 3 quotes here, like so, there we go. If I put 3 quotes like that, that'll allow me to create a multi-line string here. So that way I can put in all of my SQL query into one giant string here. So we'll go ahead and type begin. And then we'll say select star from scoreboard. And that's going to go ahead and allow us to select all of our data from our scoreboard. And now we need to go through and process that data. So what we're going to do is we will go 4D in data. Then let's go ahead and print our data row. And that will allow us to print out our data as we get through here. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint here so that way we can see the data that comes back. And one last thing that we need to make sure that we do is we need to set up our database close. So inside of here, if we hit enter and go back one, so it's not part of our for loop, and we go database.close, and we need to make sure that we do what's called a polling of our database. We want to make sure our database exists so we can pull it every single frame or so. So if we come over here and we get rid of our function process, and we can go ahead and call our database pull. And the way to call it is just with database.pull. And that just basically checks if the database is alive, if there's anything wrong, things like that. And we need to set up our database close function. So func closed connection, and we'll just say print quote database has closed. And one last little thing that we're gonna have to make sure that we do is when we close our program, we want to make sure that we close our database connection, because if not, that connection may stay open. And if you guys know anything about Postgres, if you keep that database connection open, even after the user disconnects, it keeps that slot open, which is really inefficient for the server end because it's got all those extra users just sitting there doing nothing. So we need to say func underscore exit tree. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, hey, when you close the program, run this function. And we're going to say database.close. So now I'm going to save, well, I was going to save, but I guess I'm saving my scene. So I guess I'm going to save my scene real quick and call it Postgres tutorial. And we're going to go ahead and test this out and see what it does. So let's go ahead and create a breakpoint here and a breakpoint here, and I think that will do it. So let's go ahead and run this and see what it does. All right, so we're running this little connection here. So invalid operator string to int in operator plus. So we have a slight issue here. I think it's because these are supposed to be string. So it looks like I'm wrong, and actually you have to do it this way. So we'll go ahead and pull this one. So we have string, 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 decimal notation, and then string. So the reason why it needs to be a decimal notation is because this is a port. So the port needs to be a number, not a string. That's my fault. Let's go ahead and retest it and see what it does. Okay, so it's going to run its select query. You can see right here how it's running our select query. So we're going to come down here. We're going to run our little execute, and it's going to pull back some data. So awesome. Now you can see that 4D in data. Let's take a look at our data size. So in our first section here, we have our data row, which is our command tag of begin. Now we don't need this, so this is useless to us. Our second return is our actual data itself. So we have command tag select 4. Now, don't worry about what it says, select 4. It doesn't mean anything that's super useful. But if we look at our data row and we open up our array size, you can see here is our data, which is awesome. We got all the data back that we'd expect. See that? Also, it looks like we have a small error here. If we try to run our thing, we get a little invalid index data row on base array. We actually need to put D, not data row here. So that's our fault. But from here, we can go ahead and pull back our first index here, and then go ahead and pass in our data row data. So what we can do is we can say 4D in data 1, and that will pass back our single index of data. So if we actually print D and we refresh this and we try it again, and we just let it run through. Oh, it's not happy with me. Oh, whoops. Dot data underscore row, and let's try that this time. Goodness, I'm struggling over here. Okay, so if you go ahead and you look at your output, you'll see that it passed back all of our data here. So perfect, right? So now we can go ahead and use this data however we want. Like if you wanted to put data into the data, or if you wanted to put data into like a scoreboard or something like that, now you have your data back. Okay, so now that we have this, right, we have our ability to select and basically run queries on here. Let's go ahead and make this actually reusable, right? Let's make this actually usable for things other than just a single query, right? So what we can do is let's go ahead and select from DB here. Let's go ahead and copy this and let's paste it down here and say insert into DB, right? So let's do right here. We'll go with lowercase. And then we're going to say insert into lowercase scoreboard. And then we'll say ID, comma, name, comma, score. And let's go ahead and pass in a few parameters here. So let's say ID, name, comma, score. And then let's go ahead and say values. And we will go with %S, comma, quote, quote, %S, comma, %S. And then outside of here, we're going to go semicolon and then commit. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to commit our data to our database. And now down here, we're going to go %, and we're going to put in a little array here. We're going to say ID, comma, name, comma, score. And that will allow us to commit data to our database, and we no longer need this little bit here. So now if we go ahead and bring our function down, there we go. Now we can go ahead and right click here, add an 8 and duplicate it and pull it down. We'll say on button down, let's connect that to our node 2D. And on our button, let's go ahead and connect that also to our node 2D. And we're going to say for our second button here, we're going to call this select from DB. So we're going to say select from DB. And on our button down, we're going to say insert, I believe I said insert into DB right here. Okay. And now that's going to take in some parameters here. So let me go ahead and add in a child node and add in a text edit. We'll just put this over here. And I know, like I said, this is pretty ugly, but we'll just make it so that I can show you guys the gist of how it all works. And then we'll go ahead and get rid of that. All right. And let me grab these three, pull these three over, and then I'm just going to go ahead and grab a label. I know that this is probably too much for what we're trying to do, but that's all right. All right, so for the first label, we'll call it ID. Second one, we're going to call it name. And the third one, we'll call it score. Awesome. And that's a little off, but that's all right. Now, what we'll do is we'll go in here and we will go ahead and pass in $, $, text edit, and I believe it's text edit 1 is going to be ID, comma, $, text edit 3, dot text, comma, finally, $, text edit 4.text, and that'll be all of our little text data. So now if we scroll up to the top and we go ahead and we comment out our little database connection here, we should be able to run both of these commands from our scene here. So let's go ahead and click on a breakpoint here, and let's go ahead and click a breakpoint here. So that way we can do our little testing here. We'll go ahead and run this. And the first thing we'll do is we will select the first one, which in this case is insert into database. So it probably just errored out. Yeah, syntax error. I figured, considering we are not exactly doing this part correctly. So if we'll just continue, whoops, goodness. I should probably label these, eh? So let's click on button and label it. Insert data and select data. There we go. That'll make things a little easier. Now, if we click on our little script here and we go ahead and run our project after we put our two little breakpoints in here. So let's go ahead and do that. If we want to insert data, we can say something like 8. And then for our name, let's just say test number 4. And for our score, we'll say 70. And go ahead and insert that data. And we'll let that run through. Whoops. Goodness. I hit the wrong button. Let's see if that actually worked, by the way, first. Okay, it didn't run through, so that's good news. So we'll say 8 test 5, and we will say 70 or 80. Insert data, and then let's go ahead and run it through. And it should have inserted our data. So let's go ahead and run this. So you'll see here we have an error. It says column test 5 does not exist. So that usually means that we have an extra pair of quotes around our name here. So what I'm wondering is if the data we're getting back from our text edit is causing it to have an additional quote around it. That would be my guess. So let's take a look at it real quick. Let's put a breakpoint right here. And then let's go ahead and click on this, click here, and go ahead and insert our data. And let's see what our name is 80. Our score is test 5. So that's our first problem, is we have these backwards. So that's my fault. So actually this, yeah, so we have these backwards. So that's my fault. So that is why we're running into this problem. This is the part of the reason why you should name your stuff properly. This is my fault. So now if I go ahead and refresh this and I say 8 and I say test 4 or 5 and score is 90 and we go insert the data and we run it through like this and we run it all the way through. When we go ahead and we check out our Postgres and we hit play, you'll see, bam, it's inserted our data. Now, if we hit select data, if you go ahead and you check out your data row, let's see if we got any errors. The front end is not connected to the back end, so that did not work. So I figured out the issue that we're running into. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have a commit and a semicolon here. We have to make sure that our database closed is removed. So let's go ahead and remove that. And if we go up to our insert and we do the same thing, then that'll allow us to do multiple operations on the same database. Hey guys, Editor Mitch here. So I didn't really explain why this is a problem. So the reason why this is a problem is because if you don't have a semicolon and a commit, you're not telling the system to commit that transaction. So every single time you do a database operator, you're saying, hey, go ahead and begin this transaction. Like, hey, I'm going to tell you to do a thing. And then here's a thing to do. And now go ahead and put it into the database. And what we were doing beforehand was not committing the data to the database. So the database was saying, hey, I can't do anything while that transaction is still open. And the reason why we need to get rid of our database closed is because if we close our database connection, we're going to need to reopen it to go ahead and commit and do more operators on the database. You can close the database if you want to, but you're going to need to run that database connect to host again to allow it to re-get that connection. And it really depends on if you want to kill that database connection or not. It just kind of depends on you. But there is a spin up time between that connect host and that query that you're running. So you're going to want to make sure that you wait for that. Like how we have that signal up there, the connection established. You could, in theory, say, hey, I need to run this operator, so go spin off into this thread and wait for the connection established to happen. And then once that connection established happens, then commit my data, right? That would be another way of handling this. But in our case, I'm just keeping that database connection open. But anyway, let's go back to the video. Thanks, guys. So now, if I go ahead and I hit play, and I say ID of, 10, and test 7, and score of 500. Test 7's very good at this game. We click insert, and we go to our admin tool, and we go ahead and we select. You will see there's our data. Now, if we come over here and we go ahead and put a breakpoint, I already have one, so that's perfect. Select data, you'll see that it went and pulled back our data here. So if I go to my data rows, you'll see that we now have our inserted data. So that's how we do multiple operators on a database. We want to make sure that we keep that database connection alive and that we keep pulling the database like we are doing right here. Awesome. So the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and update some data. And what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and come up here. I'm going to copy my insert data, I guess. So we'll go ahead and copy that, and we're going to paste that here. All right, and we are going to say insert into, we're going to say update scoreboard set name equal to, actually, we'll say score equal to whatever this gets passed in. So let's go ahead and change this. We'll say name comma score, and we'll say update DB name score, and we'll say name score, and we'll say update scoreboard set score to that S where name is equal to %S, and we'll need to make sure we flip these two. All right. So what this should do is it should go ahead and set up, it'll take in a name and take in a score, and then we are going to set the score equal to score and name where the name is equal to name. So now what we can do is come over here to our node, select our data. We can duplicate this little button here and say update data. And inside of here, we can actually go ahead and go into our node, right click, disconnect it, right click, connect it. So on button down, we're going to go ahead and call update database, and we need to pass in a name and a score. So we already know what our name is right here and what our score is. It's right here. So I'm just going to copy this right there, and then that should do it for us. So now if I refresh this and I say, okay, someone's name is FindPointCGI, and he now has a score of 1000. So if we remember and we look at our PG admin, you'll see that I have a score of 100. So now that's going to become 1000 when this is done. So let's go ahead and run this. Run this. We'll click update data, and you'll see that it goes ahead and runs through. Syntax error at or near commit. So we have a syntax error here. What did I do wrong? Let's see. Update scoreboard, set score equal to this. That looks about right. I think it might be mad. A, because name is not wrapped, and B, because we're missing a semicolon. How much you want to bet? Let's go ahead and try that again. And let's say I got 800 points here this time. Update data, and then let's go check on it. And there we go. You'll see that it has been updated to 800. So that's all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. Now, this was a viewer suggested video, as with pretty much all of my videos at this point. So if you guys have any suggestions for future videos, go ahead and throw them in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at them. As you guys know, I have a huge Trello board that is out there for you guys to look at all the different video ideas I have for the future. And hey, if you have any questions about this, go ahead and either throw a comment in the video below or jump onto my Discord. The link is in the description, and I'll be more than happy to help you out as much as I can. But that is all I have for you guys today, so thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.